Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with the midfield mischief that's been going on today. So first of all, Danny Longa, who's a good Italian journalist, came out this morning with an absolute a rocket out of nowhere saying that Javi Guerra, who was being pursued by Milan, is close to joining Manchester United. Valencia midfielder Javi Guerra is valued at 21 to 25 million pounds. And this is a midfielder that actually ticks a lot of the boxes, and we have been linked with in the past. I'm pretty sure we were linked with him last summer. I remember doing a few videos where his name has come up with United scouting. So this was one that actually I was thinking, holy shit, have United actually been working on something behind the scenes? Because it's a good source as well. He's a decent Italian journalist, which would make sense if Milan have been pursuing the deal, coming out suggesting that maybe United have swooped in and done what some other teams do, which is let clubs negotiate transfer fees for players, and then we swoop in lastminute.com, make an offer that's a little bit higher and get a deal done relatively quickly. And I'm thinking, surely not. And evidently not, because the reports come out since from Nave Soat saying that Javi Guerra is not close to a move to Manchester United. Valencia hopeful he will sign a new contract. So Nave Soat's a good source of information as well, saying that they've reached out to Valencia, and Valencia saying that no, then he's not close to a deal to Manchester United, and that Valencia are hopeful of signing a new contract. Another Spanish journalist has said that Valencia will present Javi Guerra with the renewal offer by the end of this week. It will be done personally by Ron Goulet. Does Manchester United want him? Yes, as reported by the Italian journalist. But the player wants to hear the renewal offer and still wishes to stay. Let's see what Valencia's offer. So effectively, what looks like's happened, it's been a little bit of maybe agent mischief or nonsense coming out from journalists reporting United have made a move and are interested in Guerra. But the reality is Valencia are close to offering him a contract or a renewal on his contract, which the player himself wants to wait to hear before making a decision on his future. So he could potentially still be a player that we pivot for. But by all accounts, he wants to stay at Valencia, going off of that report. Marca, though, was saying that Manchester United and Milan are waiting for the meeting to take place on Thursday between Javi Guerra's agent and Valencia to clarify the player's future. Guerra will either renew his contract or be sold this summer. So this could potentially be one, like I said, I think it's either media mischief where we've just been linked out of the blue with a player to try to generate interest, to force Valencia maybe to offer a higher contract, because if they know there's interest from United, then potentially it would give him a little bit more bargaining room, or maybe to get Milan to bid a little bit more if they know United are interested in a player. So it could be something like that. Could be a player, though, that actually maybe we have looked at and made an inquiry about, and we're just waiting to see what happens with his future on Thursday. So we'll keep an eye on it and pay attention to it, see if anything comes out of this particular situation. But he is a good player. I think he'd be a brilliant player to bring in the midfield. 22 years old. He's 6'2", I think, as well. So tall. We do need some height in the team, I think, as well. But yeah, at the minute, feels a little bit media mischief, maybe being linked with United for to either get a new contract, get a better contract offer, or get a little bit of interest going around for him as well. But the reports are saying that actually, maybe we're waiting to see what happens with the contract renewal. So we'll have to wait and see on Thursday, I suppose, what happens. See if we get any more noise around this towards the end of the week. But give us your thoughts and feelings on Javi Guerra. I think he'd be a good shout for the midfield, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out, because by all accounts, he's more likely to sign for Valencia going off of those reports. But we'll wait and see how it plays out, because obviously if he doesn't, maybe he does become a viable option. And going off to the original report, 21 to 25 million pounds is a good price to pay for a midfielder of his potential anyway. He's only a young 22 years old, I think. So a very young midfielder. Does fit tick a lot of the boxes from the profile perspective that we would maybe be looking for. But pay attention to it, keep an eye on it for you. Give us your thoughts and your feelings on that in the comments below, as I'm sure that you will. Now let's stick with the midfield. So Manchester United are one of the clubs interested in AZ Alkmaar sensation Kees Smit. TBR Football have reported that United, Chelsea, Tottenham and Aston Villa have all expressed an interest in Smit, who was named player of the tournament at this summer's under-19 Euros. Now, I read that in the Manchester Evening News. I also read the report, though, from TBR Football, and it did feel a little bit clickbaity because the main story was talking about potentially Tottenham and Chelsea being interested in the player. Again, another good profile of player, young, developmental, up and coming, but I don't know if we're going down that route anymore. Like previously when we were doing videos before the transfer window actually opened and we were saying ticks the boxes of what Ineos would be looking for, young, developmental, up and coming and all of that stuff. Well, actually now maybe we're looking for Premier League proven, more slightly older, more experienced players. It seems the direction of travel that we're going down. But Smith would be a very interesting profile to bring in. He's played in different positions for his age as well. Good in terms of, ball carrier, take on, goals, assists. I think he does look like an interesting profile, but whether we're still going down that route, because, we've walked away from Sphere Nipan, who we were heavily linked with until Amrim came in, and then all of a sudden he's gone to City, and we weren't interested in him anymore. So whether we're going down a completely different avenue now, because we do need to get some experienced players in. I think Amrim's maybe looked at it and Sesta said, no, I need ready-made players now because we're not in a position as a team and a squad and a club yet to develop these young players properly, because we're having to throw them in at the deep end and rely on them too much when it's hindering their growth because it's too much pressure too soon for a lot of these players. And I think that's maybe the direction we're going down, but would be an interesting profile. Not one that I've watched loads of, watched some highlights, done some research and stuff. Does look like a decent player, but I think we're coming away from that. And it did feel, like I said, when I read the actual report in TBR, it was kind of felt a little bit clickbaity, just putting loads of names and clubs that were potentially interested in him at the end of a report that was more heavily linking in with Tottenham and Chelsea. But we'll keep an eye on that one for you as well, and we'll see if anything plays out. And I'll give you any updates if they come out. But give us your thoughts on Schmidt in the comments below. Okay, let's go through another Daily Osimhen story. So Manchester United want Victor Osimhen and asked him to reduce his wage. However, the striker rejected this. Galatasaray are set to hold talks this week to finalise his agreement. And that came from a very credible Turkish journalist. He's seen as he's got 1.5 or 1.8 million ex-followers, believed to be the Romano of Turkey. So the kind of one source, I think, from that area that is fairly reliable, suggesting that United want Victor Osimhen, but also asked to reduce his wages. However, he rejected that. So now he's potentially going to Galatasaray. And I can probably see that. So I can see something in there. There's no smoke without fire with Osimhen. I do think that, Laurie Whitwell and people like this have said that we've, made inquiries about Osimhen. I think even David Ornstein said we did, but we were put off by his wage demands, which, clearly we've maybe had that conversation to say, do you fancy coming? But we're not going to give you the 400 odd grand a week wages that you want in. And he's like, no, I'd rather, no, I don't want to. And then that's it. It's probably as far as the conversation's gone. But I do think that was, interesting. I suppose, if anything, yes, we know that we're not going to pay those sort of salaries, which is, I can't complain about that, because the reason we're struggling to move on this transfer window is because we give big salaries to players and we can't move them on. Like Sancho, Anthony and Rashford are 3 players that we're trying to remove, and we're struggling, not because of the transfer fees we paid for them or anything other than the fact of their wages. It is their wages that are the big problem. And that's the issue with United when we want to come to remove players, is the salaries that we pay them, because we've been paying them so much outside of what other clubs are prepared to pay, that it traps them in that situation. Casemiro is another example. Casemiro is not necessarily the £60 million we paid for him that's the issue. The problem was we gave him a £350,000 a week contract, which I know has reduced over the last couple of years with no Champions League football. They get a 25% reduction in their income, but it's still above what other teams are likely to pay for him. And that's the problem. And it would be maybe the same issue with Osimhen. And I don't think that he's necessarily, not worth that money, because he is one of the best strikers in the world, but he's still unproven in the Premier League. And we've seen big players from abroad do really well and then come to the Premier League and struggle. And there's no guarantee that Osimhen wouldn't be exactly the same, or maybe not quite be as lethal as he has been throughout his career so far. I would argue to say I think that he would be, but it's a question mark, and it's a massive red flag, and it is a massive, sorry, not a red flag, a massive question mark. And is it a £400,000 a week question mark that you want to take a gamble on? I don't think United would want to do that. But I suppose on the other side as well, it does maybe show a little bit of ambition that maybe that we are actually trying to get these players, which you can't really harm us for. But we are where we are in terms of no Champions League and in a financial mess when it comes and trying to rebuild our wage structure. You know, that does require a bit of discipline, in my opinion. So it's interesting to see that maybe we were asking him to reduce his wages. He said no, and then potentially he might be going to Galatasaray now, but we'll wait and see how that one plays out. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. I'm sure you'll have mixed view. I'm sure I'll have mixed opinions on that in the comments below. But you know, it is what it is. I don't think we should be doing those sort of salaries, not with the position that we're in at the moment, because it's those sort of salaries that have got us to where we are now, and we're struggling to move on from that. And until we break that cycle, yes, it's going to mean some pain of missing out on players, but hopefully short-term pain, long-term gain. But give us your shouts on that in the comments below. And let's go through the Mbeumo news. So the Mbeumo news is, I don't know, Manchester United. Manchester United's absolute focus remains on Bryan Mbeumo deal, with talks set to continue this week. No agreement with Brentford last week, but Man United keep working on it, and Bryan also keeps giving priority to United move. A deal on, that came from Fabrizio Romano, suggesting that we're still in talks. We haven't been in talks. We're still working on it. We're like, I don't know what's going on with the Mbeumo situation. Nobody really knows. There's no real news coming out. There's no updates. I think everybody's just stuck in the same position where, you know, we are where we are. We're still in talks, and nobody knows when it's going to get done, or if it's going to get done, or what the hold-up is. Who knows? I'm starting to think, I'm wondering whether we actually have the money to do the Mbeumo deal, and we're having to wait until we get an exit in order to pay the money up. I'm starting to think, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, you know, do we just not have the 55 million or the 60 million pounds in cash, and we're waiting to maybe sell a player, or for an exit, or maybe for one of the, you know, the sell-on clauses that we have with other players to come in order for us to then do it? I'm starting to think maybe it is something to do with that. But the reality is, nobody knows. Nobody's reporting anything regarding it, apart from that one update from Romano saying deal's still on, we're still in talks. And it is what it is, and we are where we are. So, you know, that's the latest on Mbeumo. Now let's go for the exit news. So keeping with Romano, he said that Rasmus Højlund doesn't want to leave Manchester United this summer. His desire is to stay. The only possibility for sale is in case United decide to advance in talks and proceed with his exit. Inter keen for weeks, but deal now in standby. So that came from Fabrizio Romano. I don't necessarily think that's surprising. We've always known that Rasmus Højlund himself wants to stay, but if United want to sell him, then you know, he would want to go, and we can't be selling Højlund at the moment until we bring in a striker, and we can't get a striker in until we get other exits, and it's just a mess. So we need to get these exits moving along in order to create the space and get some money in so that we can move on with our lives. And then potentially, I think if we got a striker in, then maybe we would do a deal for Inter with Rasmus, or until we've got, you know, maybe the Mbeumo deal done, then we can start working and negotiating on a striker. And if we got close to getting a striker deal done, then maybe we would look to sell Højlund. But, you know, it's always been the case that he doesn't want to go. It's down to United to sell him, and that would be it. And obviously, if we did accept an offer for him, he'd have to go, or he'd be, you know, his desire is to stay, but he would have to go if we accepted a bid for him. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And Inter Milan is still there as well, so you know, we've got the option there. It's just we need to bring in players. You can't sell, you know, even though the argument is that Højlund didn't have the best season last season, but you still can't sell a striker and bring nobody and not have anybody next season. That's just insane. But yeah, give us your thoughts on that in the comments. And the actual player that's closer to an exit, it feels like, is Jadon Sancho. So what's the latest there? So Juventus are very optimistic about signing Jadon Sancho, with only final details left to complete the deal. €25 million to Manchester United and a €6 million salary plus bonuses for the player. So that came from an Italian journalist that's close to Juventus. Jadon Sancho is getting closer to Juventus from Manchester United. Positive talks and expected a direct negotiation this week to try to reach a deal. That came from Nico, who's a good Italian journalist. Alfredo Padula has said that Juventus are expected to pay around 25 million for Jadon Sancho, but there is still a gap in their offer and what Sancho wants. Juve's first salary offer was 5 million euros, but they are ready to send an improved proposal, so that's good. Corriere dello Sport have been saying that Jadon Sancho is one step away from joining Juventus. There is now only a gap of 1 to 2 million euros between Sancho's wage demand and Juve's offer. Juve are also considering offering Manchester United £25 million plus bonuses, which is good. Fabrizio Romano has said that Manchester United and Juventus will have new contacts in the coming days. Jadon Sancho's salary is still the point to resolve. So, multiple Italian outlets all suggesting that maybe that deal is getting closer. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out, though, because, we've been told that Mbeumo was close for the last 3 weeks and nothing's happened there. But it's encouraging. I think that the price believed to be around 20 to 25 million euros. There is still some suggestions of a swap deal potentially involving Douglas Luiz. We'll have to wait and see what happens regarding that. But it's encouraging because the deal with Sancho is his wages and his salary demands. And according to those reports, if they're close or maybe within 1 to 2 million euros, then hopefully that can be ironed out and then we can get this deal done. And maybe this is the catalyst to sell Sancho, remove his wages, get a little bit of cash in, and then that gives us the extra funds to maybe go for Mbeumo. Who knows? But we'll have to wait and see. But it's encouraging that there's potentially a few more encouraging stories. Not exactly breaking news. We know that Sancho's going to be going in talks with negotiations with Juventus, but it's encouraging that the talks are more gearing up towards potentially getting a deal, or because it's a salary that we need that needs to be resolved. And if they're getting close on that, then maybe we could get a deal done on that one in the next week or so. But let's wait and see what happens. Now let's move on to Rashford. So new round of talks will start from next week for Marcus Rashford's future. Rashford is accepted. He is not part of Manchester United and Ruben Amorim's plans, with options being explored ahead of new chapter. That came from Romano. Now, Matteo, who's a good source, said that the Marcus Rashford option for Barcelona has never faded, and in recent days there have been new contacts between the parties to keep it alive. Rashford's priority is to go to Barcelona, and he will wait for a concrete move from the club before seeking other solutions. I just hope he doesn't wait too long and miss out on any potential options just for himself. It just seems really like, I get that you want to go and play for a certain club, and I'm not in a position to sit here and tell players what to do with their lives and their careers, right? If it's Rashford's dream to go and play for Barcelona, then fair enough. I think you should follow your dreams in life, right? But it just seems crazy that they want Nico Williams. There's reports I'll go through in a second, which is saying that maybe Barcelona are now going for Diaz, and you're like their third choice. And then if you're refusing to go other places as well, do you know what I mean? Unless he has been told that they want him anyway, regardless, and they're going to play him up front or something, and they've told him just to hang fire. We don't know. That's plausible, I suppose. But it just seems really like, I just hope he doesn't waste other opportunities, because Bayern Munich are interested in Rashford as well, and I think that would be a good move for him as well. So I just hope he doesn't wait too long and then shuts all the doors to go down to other teams and get playing football again. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Florian Plettenberg said that FC Barcelona want to try again for Marcus Rashford, and move for Luis Diaz is currently very unlikely. So Barca have reopened talks with Rashford. The 27-year-old winger is set to leave Manchester United, where he is under contract till 2028. Rashford has many inquiries, and Barcelona are one of them. Now, that came from Florian Plettenberg. Now, Florian Plettenberg, I always say, I think take with a pinch of salt his stories outside of Germany or outside of Bayern Munich specifically, because I've never found him to be that credible when it comes to information outside of Germany, suggesting, though, that Barcelona want to try for Rashford, and that a move for Diaz is currently very unlikely. However, Fabrizio Romano said that Barca are aware of Rashford's intention to join, but they want to try again for Diaz. So Romano is going on his video today all about how Barcelona want Diaz, and they want Diaz, and they want to go back in for Luis Diaz, and they're aware of Rashford wants to join them, but they're still going to try for Luis Diaz first. So I would believe Romano ahead of Florian Plettenberg in that specific situation as well. But it is what it is with Rashford. He's waiting for Barcelona. Barcelona don't seem to be wanting to make a move for him anytime soon. They're going to try for Luis Diaz. which, Liverpool really going to want to sell Luis Diaz now, considering everything that's happened there. I mean, who knows? Who knows? They've already refused to have a conversation regarding Bayern Munich and Luis Diaz. So, good luck to Barcelona to go and try and get a player out of Liverpool at this particular moment in time with everything that's happened. But, it is what it is. That's where we are with Rashford, and I'll bring you any updates if they come out. And then the final story I've got for you is regarding Garnacho. So Laurie Whitwell has said that London appeals to Alejandro Garnacho and Chelsea remains interested. Sources say £70 million is what United have asked for, but the club are insisting they haven't set any price yet. So Laurie Whitwell is saying that we haven't necessarily put any price on Garnacho. We'll wait and see what the bids and what the offers are, but also suggesting that maybe Chelsea still remain interested in Garnacho. That does feel a little bit maybe like one of his likely destinations. I think Aston Villa are the other club potentially interested in Garnacho. Maybe there could be a deal or something done between us and Villa for Garnacho and Ollie Watkins, who might now become a viable striker target. Now that Gyökeres is going at Arsenal, I wouldn't be against doing something like that as well, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. So, but that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates. Don't forget, smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.